Good evening. Welcome to the Agoura Hills Plan Commission meeting. This meeting is being conducted in person in the council chamber and also by utilizing video conferencing. Please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices and do not access Zoom during the live meeting as it will cause interference with the audio-visual system in the council chambers. Tonight's meeting may be viewed on Zoom via the link on the agenda, by live stream on YouTube by entering Agoura Hills Plan Commission meeting in your browser and clicking on the link for May 18, 2023, or view the live or archived meeting on the city's website at agourahillcity.org and click on the Watch Meetings Online button. I'll now defer to our city clerk.
Thank you, Chair Ascension. There will be an opportunity for the public to speak on any item listed on the agenda. Any person in the council chambers who wishes to speak or submit a written comment is requested to complete a comment card for each item and submit to the city clerk prior to the public comment portion of the item. Comments submitted at the meeting will be provided to the Planning Commission for review and filed with the official record. For any person participating remotely, written public comments were requested to be emailed by 4 p.m. today and distributed to the Planning Commission in advance of the meeting. To request to speak during public comment, please click on the raise hand button on the Zoom toolbar. Request to speak must be received prior to the chair closing the public comment portion of the meeting of the item. Public testimony for all speakers is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Written public comments will not be read aloud by the city clerk. For full details, please refer to the public participation section on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And for the Pledge of Allegiance, I'll ask Commissioner Roth, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. Everyone please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. And I will now defer to City Clerk Rodriguez to administer the oath of office.
Martin, can you hear me? Okay. Ms. Anderson, would you please stand? And raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Kate Anderson,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I want to congratulate Commissioner Anderson on her appointment. It's a pleasure to serve with you again. So congratulations. And I also want to recognize our former commissioner, Murtaza Mogri. He has already moved out back east, but on behalf of all of us on the commission, we wish Murtaza well and all the best for him and his family. So with that, I'm going to go defer to the city clerk for roll call.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson,
Present.
Commissioner Reinhardt,
Present.
Commissioner Roth,
Present.
Commissioner Sharon,
Present.
Chair Ascension.
Present.
Chair Ascension, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. So before we move on to the selection of a Planning Commission Vice Chair, I will open the floor for any public comments. So for Council Chambers attendees, please submit a public comment card to the City Clerk. And for Zoom attendees, please click the raise hand button on the Zoom toolbar now. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the Commission, you hand to our City Clerk and do not approach the dais. So I'm going to defer to the City Clerk for any public comments.
Thank you, Chair Ascension. We did not receive any written public comments. We do not have any speaker cards. I'll defer to staff for any remote participants. Amber?
Chair Ascension, no hands are raised to speak on this item.
Okay, thank you very much. Greatly appreciate that. Okay,
Thank you. Pardon me, Chair Ascension, if you could also call for the approval of the agenda.
did I skip that part? Yes, thank you very much. I apologize. I went a little bit ahead. It's been a while. So we're going to go to the approval of the agenda. So I need someone to make a motion and a second to approve the agenda. And when you do that, please state your names in the process.
Commissioner Roth moves to a motion to approve the agenda.
Commissioner Reinhardt seconds.
So we have a motion and a second, and I'm going to defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
Commissioner Reinhardt?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Commissioner Sharon?
Aye.
Chair Ascension?
Aye.
Chair Ascension, you have approval, 5-0.
Thank you very much, and thank you for keeping me on track. Greatly appreciate that. Okay, now we're going to move to the selection of the new vice chair, and I'll call for nominations for the new vice chair. I'll make the first nomination first, and then others can make a nomination if they wish to do so. I would like to nominate Commissioner Anderson to be the new vice chair for the remainder of the calendar year. Is there a second for that one?
Commissioner Reinhardt seconds.
Okay, and then at this point, are there any other nominations for vice chair?
Commissioner Sharon nominates Commissioner Roth.
And Commissioner Roth,
No need to second the motion. We'll just, we'll go with the one that already has a second.
okay, so do you want to withdraw the nomination, or you still want to go forward with it?
Yeah, we'll withdraw.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's okay with that? Okay, okay. So we just have one nomination for Commissioner Anderson, and we have a second for Commissioner Anderson. So since we have no further nominations, we have a motion and a second. We're going to defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
Commissioner Reinhardt?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Commissioner Sharon?
Aye.
Chair Ascension?
Aye.
Chair Ascension, you have approval, 5-0.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, Vice Chair Anderson. We're now going to move to the next section, the public hearing. This section is reserved for persons wishing to speak on items not listed on the agenda that are under the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. For council chamber attendees, please submit a comment card to the city clerk. For Zoom attendees, please click the raise hand button on the Zoom toolbar now. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. Persons addressing the Planning Commission shall not engage in disorderly conduct that disrupts or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the Commission, you hand to our city clerk and do not approach the dais. So I'm going to defer to the city clerk for public comments.
Thank you, Chair Ascension. No written public comments have been received. No speaker cards have been submitted. I'll now defer to staff for any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Ascension, no hands are raised to speak on this item.
Okay. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. We're now going to move to the consent calendar. So this section is reserved for persons wishing to speak on items on the consent calendar. For council chambers attendees, please submit a comment card to the city clerk. For Zoom attendees, please click the raise hand button on the Zoom toolbar now. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the commission, you hand to our city clerk and do not approach the dais. So I'm going to defer to the city clerk for public comments.
Thank you, Chair Ascension. No written public comments have been received. No speaker cards have been submitted. I'll now defer to staff for any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Ascension, no hands are raised to speak on this item.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the commission on the consent calendar? Okay, seeing none, I will now call for a motion and a second to adopt the consent calendar. And I need the maker of the motion and the second to state your names.
Commissioner Anderson moves to approve the consent calendar.
Commissioner Sharon seconds.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and I'm going to defer to the city clerk for the roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Vice Chair.
Vice Chair, yes.
Aye.
Commissioner Reinhardt, I updated you. I apologize.
Whoa.
Vice Chair Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Reinhardt.
Aye.
Commissioner Roth.
Aye.
Commissioner Sharon.
Aye.
And Chair Ascension.
Aye.
You have approval, 5-0.
Thank you very much. Okay. Going to move to our next agenda item. Our next item is to conduct a public hearing and conduct a request to, one, adopt a resolution, recommend the City Council adopt an ordinance of the City of Agoura Hills, California, amending Article 9 zoning of the Agoura Hills Municipal Code to modify Chapter 3 commercial districts and Chapter 6 regulatory provisions to add provisions to the outdoor dining design and operational standards and amend the off-street parking provision to allow outdoor dining opportunities. And two, to make a finding of exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. And I'll now defer to Community Development Director Denise Thomas for the staff presentation, or is it actually Jessica's with the staff presentation?
I will say a couple words before I turn it over to Jessica. It's the Jessica show this evening.
Okay.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, community. My name is Denise Thomas. I'm the Community Development Director here in the city of Agoura Hills. As you may be aware, we had a pandemic not that long ago, and as part of the pandemic, dining indoors became problematic, and it was severely restricted, in some instances shut down altogether. So during the pandemic, when we had the opportunity to, we allowed restaurants to begin using their outdoor space so that they could continue to operate their businesses, and it was done to help our businesses at least stay afloat, if not thrive, during the pandemic. Now that the pandemic has been officially called as over, and we have been using temporary executive orders for some time, we are now in a position where we can propose to you outdoor operation permit requirements and amendments to our code that would allow that kind of activity to continue. And with that, I'll defer to Jessica Clevenger, our principal planner, to present you with her proposed ordinance amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise, and welcome, commissioners. The next item on the agenda is the revisions to the existing outdoor dining operation permits and the parking amendment. Next slide. Thank you. We're going to start the discussion by talking about the project directives. Then we're going to go into some of the research that staff has conducted. We're going to touch on some of the background of the temporary permits that Denise just mentioned and some of the outreach that staff has performed. We're then going to discuss the proposed ordinance amendments, move to next steps, and we're going to wrap it up with staff's recommendation. Next slide, please. So there really is only one directive with this, and that is to find a way to incorporate standards into our ordinance which will allow restaurants to continue to serve their patrons outdoors. In order to do this, staff is proposing that we amend the regulatory process to more thoroughly review outdoor dining permits. Amending the ordinance will ensure that there is adequate parking. It will also ensure that the additional seating does not impact the health and sanitation requirements that are part of the building code. It will also ensure that we are meeting the fire department requirements with regards to access and incorporating ADU or ADA status requirements. Next slide, please. To prepare for this ordinance, staff reached out to 14 different local and quasi-local jurisdictions to talk to them about their either amended or their proposed ordinances. And what we found was, with the majority of these, they had restaurants that were expanding into public spaces. So with that, they had to adopt an ordinance that would set aside provisions so that when the restaurant expanded into the public space, it was charging the restaurateur X amount of dollars per square foot of use because it is a public space. Thankfully, within the city of Agoura Hills, we don't have that as an issue. All of our restaurants that have expanded into private space, so we don't have to address that part. Next slide, please. The city started, as Denise had already said, issuing temporary outdoor operation permits, TOOPs, in June of 2020 due to the pandemic, and we have expanded that. With our last extension, it'll end in February of 2024. During the height of our issuance, during the height of COVID, when people were actually allowed to go back to restaurants, we had 25 different facilities within the city that we were issuing TOOPs for. To our knowledge, right now, we have 13 local restaurants that have reached out and indicated that they would like to turn their temporary permit into a permanent permit. And again, like I said, all of them are on private property. With regards to outreach, in early February 2023, staff began conducting site visits and phone calls to the restaurants who wanted us to come and talk to them. We would interview the restaurateur and we would ask them questions such as on average, how many patrons do you think want to eat outside? And it came down to roughly 62% of the patrons. We also ask these restaurants, obviously, do you intend or do you wish to turn your temporary permit into a permanent permit? And also, if you do you intend on proposing any additional changes to your outdoor area? 6 of those said that they do intend on proposing some additional changes, and those changes range from possibly decks to shade coverings, outdoor lighting. We also have some guardrails that people want to put in for security measures. And then 7 of the restaurants indicated that they were fine with theirs as is. After the adoption of this ordinance, staff is going to, again, do some additional outreach, and I'll go over that in a minute too. Next slide, please. So for the proposed ordinance, staff is proposing to amend 2 sections of the municipal code right now. The first section is section 9395, the outdoor dining design and operational standards. Within this section, staff anticipates clarifying the existing standards or regulations that govern outdoor dining permits. We anticipate incorporating the fire department regulations with regards to access, the plumbing code regulations with regards to health and sanitation. And we also are going to incorporate a requirement for a notice of posting or a point of contact. So if somebody's outdoors and they experience like maybe the tables are creeping and their ADA access is blocked, then that person can file a complaint or call somebody who's at the restaurant or the property owner and try to get that rectified right away. Additionally, staff anticipates adding a new section, section 9395.2, to address regulating a permit or incorporating a permitting process. As it stands now, the code is silent if a restaurant wants to expand from 1 to 3 tables. 4 tables or more, that becomes a community development director decision. What staff is proposing for the sake of documenting even the smallest expansions is we're going to propose a zoning clearance process. So it'll be a ministerial application for 1 to 3. If it's 4 or more, it'll depend on whether or not they're expanding beyond a 10% threshold. If that outdoor area is 10% or less of their existing seating, interior seating and waiting area, it'll be a community development director decision. If it's more than 10%, it'll be a planning commission decision. And the rationale behind the 10% comes directly from the plumbing code, because in general, and there's a formula, in general, if the restaurant expands more than that 10%, there may be a need to add additional sanitation. So female bathrooms, male bathrooms, possibly urinals. So we kind of envision those coming in also along with the conditional use permits. It's going to be a larger type of development. Finally, staff anticipates adding a second new section, 9395.3, which will incorporate findings for the approval of the outdoor dining permits. Next slide, please. The second section of the municipal code, we are seeking to amend the parking allocation table. With regard to the proposed amendment, staff anticipates amending the existing parking for restaurants from 15 spaces per 1,000 square feet of seating and waiting area to 9.6 feet or 9.6 spaces per 1,000 square feet of existing gross floor area. And this comes directly from the ITE, or the Institute of Transportation Engineers standards. Those are a nationally recognized set of parking demand standards based on a collection of research studies. And I do want to point out that there was an error in the staff report that was presented to me. I put 9.6 seats instead of 9.6 spaces, but it's 9.6 parking spaces. Next slide, please. So currently, the ordinance is tentatively scheduled for City Council for a first reading on June 14th, followed by a second reading on June 28th. After the second reading, staff is going to conduct an additional outreach to all of the restaurants. We're also going to post the materials on a web page. Materials on the web page are going to be not only the ordinance, but some directions as to what they need to do to apply for the permanent ordinance and the application as well. And then on July 28th, 30 days after, the ordinance will take effect. And then on February 2024, the temporary ordinances will expire. So there'll be 7 months of time for the restaurants to apply for a permanent ordinance. Next slide, please. And with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve a resolution recommending City Council adopt an ordinance amending provisions to the outdoor dining design and operational standards and amending provisions related to off-street parking. And that concludes staff's presentation, and I'm here for questions.
Thank you, Jessica, for a very thorough report. Much appreciated. Are there any questions from the Plan Commission on the staff presentation? Vice Chair
Yeah,
Anderson.
thank you for that. That's very thorough, and the research you guys have done is fantastic. And I don't have any questions on what we're proposing, but as you were describing that and the 13 restaurants that want to do that, will the, how will we make a decision about whether they need to come, whether it's a minor, how do we say it, minor outdoor dining permit or a major one? Because in other words, if a restaurant already has this outdoor dining, is that outdoor dining, and say it's more than 10% of what their indoor dining is, are we going to say, okay, you're not grandfathered in and you do have to come before the Planning Commission, or?
So if their outdoor dining is a result of a temporary outdoor operation permit, they will have to apply for a permanent one. There are some restaurants in the city which were approved with outdoor dining prior to the tubes. They already had a permit for it. We're not going to make them comply. A lot of times with conditional use permits, like the construction of a restaurant, that was part of the original application. That's approved under the original entitlement. But for all of those restaurants that are just functioning outside with a tube, they're going to have to come in with a permanent outdoor permit. And when we have them come in as part of the application, we're going to ask them for a site plan. That's going to be part of the submittal requirements. It'll show the number of tables that they're going to be proposing, in addition to the square footage, the gross square footage of interior and the square footage of the exterior. So we'll do that calculation. If it's over 4, that's an easy parameter right there. We know it's either going to be a minor or a major, and then we'll have to determine, is that additional square footage more than the 10% of the interior space that they already have.
So in other words, you're looking at what the restaurant was before the tubes.
Yes.
And if the tubes adds more than 10% of their indoor space, then they're going to come before us.
More than 10%, correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Commissioner Reinhardt.
I had a question about the parking standards. I understand that our current standard is 15 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet, and the reduction based on, I guess, general industry standards is to 9.6. How is that formulation determined by, is it cities that are in similar size to ours? Does it take into effect public transit infrastructure that's in place? It just seems like a very drastic jump. And one of the things that makes our city extraordinary is if you look at some of the newer developments in surrounding communities, a lot of them are underparked.
It is for cities of all sizes. The ITE standards are a range of thousands of different studies that have gone on. So they try to find basically the happy medium. They do in some of the studies exclude things like downtown LA, and they have a range for different municipalities. I can't speak exactly as to how they do the studies or how they get to those formulas, but in general, from my knowledge, that's how they do it. They kind of have some outliers. They have some mega metropolitan areas like LA, New York, and stuff. Those have their own parameters, and they would probably include the transportation factors into that as well. And then they have kind of smaller cities. Do they break it down to a city of 7 square miles? I don't think they break it down into those smaller subsets.
Just a quick follow-up. With most of those with the restaurants that we have that would be applying for this permit being on public or being on private property, is there a need to change that formula?
We have received some correspondence from restaurants that are saying that our parking requirement is too broad. It's very difficult to meet some of the parking areas within the city. We have taken a look too at, have we received any complaints since June of 2020 when we started issuing the tubes with regard to parking? And obviously during the beginning of COVID, there were a lot of people who weren't going out to the restaurants, but the restaurants are pretty much full at this point. We haven't received any complaints regarding that. So we don't feel as if decreasing the parking requirement is going to be a negative for the restaurants. We feel like they're probably already at that threshold right now, and it's going to benefit the restaurants if we allow them to reduce the parking.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Roth.
Thank you. I think this is a very well-constructed staff report, and appreciate everyone's effort on this. My question on the parking front as well is very quickly, is the intention for having the reduced parking requirement to encourage the actual outdoor dining, or is it otherwise just to make it easier on the individual restaurants?
It's mostly to provide relief to the restaurants because there's going to be, if we didn't reduce the parking, the reality is that a lot of these restaurants would not be able to have that existing outdoor dining. They've been, from what we've heard, very successful with the outdoor dining, and they have a desire to continue that. So it's for community development, basically, to encourage these businesses, especially these businesses. Everybody was hit hard during COVID. We want to try to support some of our local businesses and our local restaurants.
Thanks.
Any other questions from my commissioners for staff? I have one quick question. I know in Oak Park, there was a restaurant, I don't know if they still do it, they had outdoor dining in the parking lot. I remember that. I don't think there's, are there any in Agoura Hills that do? I don't think there's any, they're in the parking lot.
There are a couple that have taken up a couple of spaces in the parking.
Okay, but it's just like we're talking, I guess it wouldn't affect the parking because it's only 3 or 4 spots, so it won't be.
It's very limited. It's,
Very limited, okay.
Yes, not anything that needs to be ADA accessible. We stopped that from happening during the 2 period, but there are a couple of spaces kind of close to the restaurant doors, obviously, because for convenience sake.
Right.
But.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions? Okay, so now we're going to move to the next part. Written public comments were requested to be emailed in advance of tonight's meeting. So if you wish to speak on this item, please click the raise hand button on the Zoom toolbar now. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and the speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. We respectfully request that you're something distributed to the commission, you hand to our city clerk and do not approach the dais. So I will now open the public hearing, and I'll defer to the city clerk for public comments.
Thank you, Chair Ascension. No written public comments have been received, nor speaker cards submitted. I'll now defer to staff for remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Ascension. No hands are raised to speak on this item.
Okay. So before closing this public hearing, do any of the commissioners have any further questions of staff? Going once, going twice? Okay. So there being no further questions, I will now close the public hearing. So before we move to deliberations, does any commissioner have any further comments on this item? Okay, so seeing none, we're going to move to deliberations. What's happened in the past when we've done deliberations, and Vice Chair Anderson can remember this, when everybody's deliberation, everybody says, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to vote this. They give their reasons. But I think, because what happens is, benefit the chair, I listen to what everybody has to say, and it's like, oh, it's something for me to think about. I get to make the best decision in the House because I hear what everybody says, and maybe one of you says something, oh, I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point. So that denies the first person who has a deliberation, they don't have that opportunity. So this is my thought, and for the rest of the way here, I think we should do this. If you know how you're going to vote, that's fine, you can say it, but it's okay to say, you know, I want to hear what everybody else will say. I want to hear what everybody's, their opinion is, their thoughts are before I can make a decision on this. And that's perfectly appropriate, and if we have a long discussion on it, that's totally fine too. Let's just make the best decision possible. Now, a lot of times, it's pretty slam dunk, but other times it's a tough call. So that's what I like to encourage. So when we go through our deliberations, don't feel like I had to make a decision when I'm speaking right now. Sometimes you want to say, I want to hear what others have to say, and that's perfectly okay. So with that soliloquy, I'm going to start with Vice Chair Anderson for her comments, her deliberations.
Thank you, Chair Ascension. So I'm super supportive of this. I was a big fan of the outdoor dining when COVID hit, and I still have friends who are very COVID nervous and prefer to eat outside. In fact, when I have a choice, it's not so much because of COVID, but I do prefer to eat outside oftentimes. So I think it's terrific that we are updating our code to just, I think there were some silver linings in COVID, and one of the silver linings is we discovered outdoor dining and we expanded outdoor dining. So I support Agoura Hills moving in that direction. And I'm okay with the parking. I think It's a question, and I noticed the big jump too. I remember when I was first on Planning Commission, they sent me to Planning Commission school. I don't know if they still do that up in Sacramento. And I learned, I sat in a session about automated driving vehicles. Don't laugh. But like there were experts there who were saying, here, the reason we're talking to you about this is as planning commissioners, you have to vote on parking. And we encourage you, and there was this whole assembled panel of experts, we encourage you to reduce the parking because in the not too distant future, and who knows for real, but in the not too distant future, we're not going to need all of this parking. So it's in line with the education that I've had so far. And are we supposed to be making a motion or you don't want to make a
Not
motion?
yet, not
Okay, all right, there we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Anderson. Let's go down the line. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Well, I definitely can appreciate the future looking, and it'll be very interesting when we do have self-propelling cars going around everywhere. Although I still like driving, so I definitely support the idea of promoting business within the city, and that we've all had to pivot and adapt over the last few years. My questions come from, and I guess my concerns come from, the city continuing to grow. If we are to, have higher density housing at some point in the, next 10 to 20 years, we're going to need some of those parking spots. So that's where some of my concern comes from. And maybe I should have asked this during staff questions, I'm not sure, but is this just related to the restaurant industry, or is it for all developments going forward that we would change the ratio?
This is just an amendment for restaurants only.
Okay, thank you. So I guess that answers my questions, but yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Roth.
Thanks. Like Commissioner Vice Chair, Anderson, I do think this is a well thought out and constructed and well balanced ordinance that obviously takes into the need of our local businesses, and want to commend staff for the outreach and the communication. It sounds like it was quite constant with our local businesses, and I think similarly, having experienced the outdoor dining element that we had here throughout COVID was absolutely a game changer, right? With those who were a little bit more COVID concerned throughout the pandemic, and so I think the continuation of that and allowing folks that option, I think the survey suggests that a lot of restaurant goers would appreciate having more optionality around that. I think that's the right move. So, like I said, I think this is a good ordinance, and agree with echo the sentiments that have been shared.
Thank you. Commissioner Sharon.
I am going to echo my fellow commissioners. It is well thought out. It is well communicated with the community and the restaurant owners and operators. And I think it is really great progress in what we are trying to encourage local businesses to grow and thrive. So I approve. I appreciate everything in this. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I get to go last, and the drawback of going last is everybody's made such wonderful arguments. There's only so many ways I can say, yes, I can make all the findings, but I can make all the findings for this. This just makes sense. This is very logical. It came out of the pandemic. It's unfortunate it came out through the pandemic, but here we are, and I think this makes a lot of sense, and I echo all the comments made by the Vice Chair and my fellow commissioners. So with that, I will now call for a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation. And I need the maker of the motion and the second to state your names.
Chair Roth, Chair Roth. Stole your spot there. Commissioner Roth, I move to adopt the resolution for this evening's planning commission.
Commissioner Sharon to second.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. I'm going to defer to the city clerk for roll call.
Commissioner Reinhardt,
Aye.
Commissioner Roth,
Aye.
Commissioner Sharon,
Aye.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Aye.
Chair Asuncion.
Aye.
Chair Asuncion, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you very much. And now the magic words. Or is there any magic words? Isn't there something where you all say,
Because it's not like waiting until the council.
It isn't you're waiting for the decision of the planning commission is final and let.
No,
this
it's not
This
that.
is not that. Yeah.
Okay.
This is an ordinance. If it were
a
a
development?
discretionary permit, then yes, you
Okay.
would be right.
I'm overthinking it as usual. Okay.
It's okay.
Thank you very much. It's different when you do that. Okay. We're back. Okay. So we're going to move on. Are there any comments from staff at this time?
Yes. Hi, Denise Thomas, Community Development Director. I just wanted to express my gratitude to former Planning Commissioner Chair Mowgri and his family for all of the work that he did. We went through some pretty challenging projects, and he was there, and he was very thoughtful, and the input that he gave was always very well appreciated. I'd like to welcome you guys to your first ordinance hearing. That's kind of nice and kind of exciting. If some of you reached out to Jessica, and I just wanted to echo that. If ever you receive a packet and you have questions, you are always welcome to call me or to call the project manager. You're going to know who that is because their name will be on the front of the report. It's lots of times it's easier to get a hold of staff than it is to get a hold of me, but if you call me, I'll do my best to contact you. And that is all I have for tonight. Thank you. Oh, also, welcome, Vice Chair Anderson. Welcome back to the Planning Commission. And that's it.
Thank you, Denise. Any other staff comments? Okay. Any comments from any of the planning commissioners?
I just want to say thank you so much. It is such a joy to be back with you guys, to be back in the diet, to be back working with the phenomenal staff here at Agoura Hills and the city attorney here at Agoura Hills. And I'm just really looking forward to our time together.
Thank you. I want to echo Commissioner Anderson's thoughts. It's great to be back. I love our 3 new commissioners. This is awesome. You guys are great. It's going to get better. You guys are doing great already, so I'm so happy. And Vice Chair Anderson, it's great to have you back as well. And as always, the staff, you guys keep us out of trouble. You advise us well, so we make the best decisions we can possibly make. Thank you so much for that. We can't do this without staff, so just thank you again. So, with that, the adjournment. The next regular Planning Commission meeting is scheduled for 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, June 1, 2023, in the Council Chambers of Civic Center. Members of the public will have the opportunity to participate in person in the council chambers or by remote conferencing via Zoom. So at this time, we will adjourn tonight's meeting. And we'll need the maker of the motion and a second to adjourn. Please state your names.
Vice Chair Anderson moves to adjourn.
Commissioner Reinhardt seconds.
Okay, and I'll defer to the city clerk for the roll call vote.
Commissioner Reinhardt,
Aye.
Commissioner Roth,
Aye.
Commissioner Sharon,
Aye.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Aye.
Chair Ascension.
Aye.
Chair Ascension, you have approval 5-0.
And thank you very much. And this meeting is now adjourned.